Is Mayik the Liar an enemy of the state? What's up guys, Acer Thorn here and welcome to another Elder Scrolls lore discussion video. So, as even casual fans of the Elder Scrolls games know, Mayik the Liar is actually a recurring character in the Elder Scrolls games, first debuting in Morrowind, and then appearing in Oblivion and Skyrim. He is never involved in any quest and never has any impact upon anything else in the game. His primary shtick is breaking the fourth wall with his various opinions about the game's design from one installment to the next. Now, the first major red flag that something is up with this guy is his name. He isn't called Mayik the Fourth Wall Breaker, he's called Mayik the Liar. The problem with this designation is that he never says anything that even could be a lie. The only statements he ever offers are in the form of opinions, meaning they can never be right or wrong. You can't lie about an opinion. The closest you can ever come to lying about an opinion is lying about the sincerity of your opinion, e.g. claiming to have the opposite opinion you actually have, such as to appease your audience or to prevent aggressive retaliation from your audience. But there's no indication that Mayik is doing even that much. Let's also not forget that in Skyrim, one of Mayik's lines of dialogue says that some people call him a liar, but he asks you not to believe that.
Some say Alduin is Akatosh, some say Mayik is a liar. Don't you believe either of those things?
What do you mean, some people say you're a liar? It is literally your name! How can we not believe that you are Mayik the Liar when your name is literally Mayik the Liar? And that's when it hit me. Maybe this isn't actually his name, but rather just a branding that somebody had placed on him against his will. Maybe this is just a label placed on Mayik by the established order in an attempt to discredit him. So you might be thinking, if they were willing to go to such great lengths to discredit him, why don't they just execute him instead? Much simpler and much more straightforward. Well, even here in America, the government will often go to great lengths to make up cock and ball stories about their political opponents in an attempt to discredit them. They can't actively prosecute them in court for their political opinions because Constitution, but they do go to great lengths to create the illusion that their political opponents are completely inept buffoons who shouldn't be listened to. For just one example that occurred fairly recently, let's take a look at disgraced former police officer Paul Manning, who had his career torn to shreds when he attempted to hold one of his fellow officers accountable for an unprovoked assault on a teenage boy. The police department he worked for justified their termination of him by spreading propaganda in the local newspaper about how he was nuts, crazy, and delusional. I'll provide a link in the description for this example. Oh, but if you think that's only one isolated incident, that is not even remotely representative of the general political climate within this country, oh boy, are you in for a shock. Here's another example from just a few years ago, where a Florida judge ordered the arrest of anyone who, quote, calls into question the integrity of the court or any of its judges. A literal direct censorship on political speech and peaceful protesting. Or how about this example of a Georgian judge who ordered the arrest of a news reporter for making an open records request? That is to say, making a request that the Georgia Open Records Act plainly allows him to make. Meanwhile, the judge isn't even pretending like her actions are motivated by anything other than anger and retaliation for this journalist's political speech. Or how about the case of Richard Fine, a disgraced lawyer who publicly protested the corruption of the California courts. While they can't directly prosecute him for the political speech itself, because again, Constitution, they can hold him in contempt of court on officially unrelated charges. which they proceeded to do for 14 months straight before CNN finally blew the lid off their bullshit. All the while freely admitting that their official charges were pretextual and they were really retaliating against him for, quote, leveling false accusations against judges. Oh, I could go on like this for hours and hours, giving you example after example after example. But I think you get the idea, so instead I'll just show you this study from the University of Minnesota stating that this is indeed a very common occurrence within our government, and let's move on to the next section that actually discusses Maik. So we know there are some governments out there, such as our own government, who are willing to do things such as branding Maik a liar in order to weaken the power of his political message when they can't just silence it outright. We must then ask ourselves, is there any other evidence, other than just his name, that Maik is the victim of such political bullying? Well, there is also the fact that he has no relevance to anything else that happens in the game. You never see him inside the city walls. He's always found outside the cities, either at the stables or just standing on the side of the road. This would suggest that he's become an outcast. Nobody inside the city limits are willing to sell food or supplies to him, and inns will not offer him beds. Why? Well, looking back at Paul Manning's tweet, he says that he fears he will never again find gainful employment, not just as a cop, but period. The private sector isn't bound by the Constitution. They can openly discriminate against Maik and Manning on the grounds that they disagree with his political opinions, and they don't even have to hide it behind pretextual charges. Now, whether that's because the majority of employers in the private sector who can offer gainful employment to Paul Manning are actively playing ball with the establishment, or because the establishment is just really good at convincing the majority of the private sector that they are right and Manning really is crazy and delusional, that remains to be seen. But the fact is, the fact that Maik can't really integrate into mainstream society would suggest that he has been effectively ostracized for his beliefs. Next, there's one of his most iconic lines. In Oblivion, this is always the first line he says when you speak to him for the first time.
Maik knows much, tells some. Maik knows many things others do not.
Maik knows much and tells some. Maik knows many things others do not.
Maybe this line should be taken to mean not just that Maik knows much, but that he knows too much. I mean, he's already been branded a liar by the establishment. In the Elder Scrolls games, people who gain vast amounts of knowledge in a very short period of time are often considered to be insane by most NPCs and even players in the game. Septimus Signus, anyone? Then there's the fact that, at least in Skyrim, assaulting him does not incur a bounty. Sounds like the police just don't give a fuck about this guy anymore. If he dies, that's just what he deserves, isn't it? Last but not least, there's the fact that, in Oblivion, every time you speak to him, he then runs away. In Oblivion, he has 100 speed and 100 athletics, and has virtually nothing in his inventory weighing him down, so he can run pretty fast. But why does Maik need to run? His AI doesn't give him a destination. It doesn't tell him to run to X location. He just starts running wherever. Why? Well, maybe he's running away from the authorities, because as soon as he starts babbling his delusional nonsense, he has given the authorities an excuse to beat the shit out of him. Yes, it may technically be unconstitutional to rough him up like that for his political opinions, but then again, that didn't stop Derek Chauvin, did it? So when Maik preaches his message, he immediately bails, with no destination in mind, just to put as much distance as he can between himself and the place where the authorities are going to swoop in and beat his ass to the ground. Now, in Skyrim, he doesn't run when you speak to him. However, maybe after 200 years, he's just tired of running. At this point, he's just out of fucks to give. He's just gonna preach his message to whoever listens, and then whatever happens, happens. Okay, so there is ample evidence in Maik's behavior to suggest that he is, or believes he is, a victim of government persecution for his political beliefs. But that still begs the question, what political beliefs? What is he saying that pisses off the establishment so much? He never really exposes any corruption within Tamriel, or even corruption within Bethesda. He just breaks the fourth wall and makes cute little comments about how the game's design and focus has evolved from one Elder Scrolls installment to the next. What is there to persecute? Well, bear in mind that because he is breaking the fourth wall, that means he is acknowledging that this is a work of fiction, because that's literally what breaking the fourth wall means. But if you really stop to think about it, and this next part is really going to be a shock for you, so I recommend you put your drinks down for a minute while you soak this in.
Maik is literally the only character in any of the games to ever actually break the fourth wall like that.
Yeah, has anyone else noticed that? The closest you can possibly get to some other character in the franchise breaking the fourth wall is this note from Elder Scrolls Online, where the author complains about being stuck in a time loop. This could be interpreted as a reference to the way quests will often reset and repeat themselves for new players in an MMO, but it's debatable whether that was the game developer's intention. With Maik, there's no debate to be had on this topic. He is breaking the fourth wall, and there's no two ways about it. And yet, he is literally the only character. From Arena to the present, Maik is literally the only character in the entire franchise to break the fourth wall, at least with such lack of ambiguity that he can't be interpreted as not breaking the fourth wall. Don't you think that's a bit weird? If Bethesda was willing to make fourth wall breaking characters, why wouldn't they make others besides Maik? Why would they insist on Maik being the only one? So this would suggest that the thing Maik is saying that pisses off the establishment so much is trying to get us all to realize that this is in fact a work of fiction. He's trying to pull us out of the Matrix, essentially. In fact, this whole theory that the Elder Scrolls games are in the Matrix would certainly explain quite a lot about these games, like how you can walk up to a new location and instantly know the name of the location despite that information not being available anywhere in the actual game world. But of course, we never believe him, since we, the player in real life, already know this is a work of fiction. We misinterpret Maik's desperate calls to action as nothing more than cute little fourth wall jokes. And so Maik is doomed to not be believed, either because he has been branded a liar, or because we don't see his breaking of the fourth wall as the call to action that it truly is. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Maik the liar isn't actually a liar. Rather, he is an enemy of the establishment, trying to call us to action to rebel against the authority by bringing to our attention that this entire simulation we're in is nothing but a lie. To discredit him, the established authority brands him a liar, and the private sector refuses to allow him the comforts of modern civilization, forcing him to be out in the wild, preaching his message to anyone who will listen. But of course, nobody ever believes him. So he is doomed to forever preach his message of rising against the authority, but like the great mythology character Cassandra, he is doomed to never be believed. So what do you guys think? Do you find this theory of mine compelling? do you have a better theory of just what exactly Mike is doing in these games? Leave your comments down below. In the meantime, however, I am Acer Thorn, and I will see you guys later.